Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Today, I'm going to be bringing on one of my amazing coaching friends, Eileen. She's a mindset coach, and we're going to talk everything about plant medicine, my favorite topic. So get ready for this. It's going to be a really, really interesting live. We're going to dive into the unique ways that plant medicine can be of service to us in our healing journey, as well as our own journeys, like Eileen and I's own journeys with plant medicine, and how it's been such a catalyst for our own spiritual awakenings and our own kind of healing processes. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring her on here. I see that she's here. Oh, hey
Hi,
Eileen.
how are
How are you?
you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. It's first time doing a live, so bear with me.
Oh, all good, all good. It's all, we all have a first time,
That's the beauty,
including
right?
myself. When I first went on live, I was like, oh God, like, am I capturing myself correctly? Am I can people hear me? Like,
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally, totally.
well, I'm so glad we can have this conversation,
Likewise.
and I'm so excited about talking more about plant medicine with you because I feel like from our last conversation we had, it was such a topic of fun to talk about, like fun, but also like elements of being extremely profound. I feel like talking through like our own healing processes and our journeys and how we've been able to grow and expand as like leaders, as coaches in this space. So, with that being said, I'd love to just like hand it over to you so you can do like an introduction to yourself, and maybe then we
Sure.
can jump into the topic of plant medicine.
Sure, totally. The first time I participated in a ceremony was in 2019, and it was life-changing. It just opened up a whole new world for me. I was, going through a difficult time. I like to refer to it as my dark night of the soul. I firmly believe that most people have a dark night of the soul at one point in their life, and I was definitely going through that. So I was just searching for answers, and I firmly believe that if plant medicine calls you, it's for a reason. So I had
Mm,
been intrigued by plant medicine for a few years previously to me actually going and participating in a journey, and I didn't know anyone who had done it, so I went in blindly, um, and it was the best decision of my life. It changed my life. It changed the way I view the world. It changed the way I view myself. I just felt so much healing and peace and clarity, and I believe that it was the catalyst that led me towards my life purpose, which is now being a coach.
that's amazing. Yeah, you and I share a very similar path with plant medicine. And I know we have a lot of people on this call who are very curious and interested in plant medicine. So when you say plant medicine called you, like you feel like a calling toward plant medicine, what does that look like? And how do people know if they have a calling towards plant medicine?
Well, for me, it's funny because I was thinking about this last night, obviously in anticipation for this call. When was the first time I heard about plant medicine? And it was, ironically enough, at a barbecue. I was at a barbecue with a bunch of people, and someone had mentioned ayahuasca, and I was like, "What's that?" I and I my descent is from Caribbean descent, but I hadn't heard about it. I know that it comes from like the jungles and like the Amazon and stuff. So again, wasn't familiar with ayahuasca, but once I started hearing about it, it intrigued me, and I just kept thinking about it. So that
Mm.
to me is what I mean when I say that if you have a calling towards it, it's because it's for you. I will say this. I would preface this by saying I don't think it's for everyone. Do I wish everyone would do it? Absolutely, but that's me selfishly. But is it for everyone? I don't know. It's not easy. It's really difficult work. Um, and everyone's brain chemistry is different. So like I said, I would love everyone to do it, but I know it's not for everyone. So I wouldn't push it on people, and that's why I say that if it calls you, it's for a reason. So I first heard about it at that barbecue, and then I just kept hearing about it. Then I was dating
Mm,
someone, and he had mentioned it, and I was like, oh, I would do it. Like, let's do it together. And he was hesitant, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. After I did it myself, I was like, oh, this is something you should really do by yourself for the first time. As scary as it is, I genuinely believe that doing it by yourself lets you really let go.
mm,
I've had multiple friends of mine who after they have seen my experience, I have seen just the changes in me and how I've grown as a person, constantly tell me like, the next time you go, I want to go with you, and I tell them absolutely not. I,
mm,
you got to go by yourself. And I've had three friends do it, participate in ceremonies after my original ceremony, and every single one of them said the exact same thing. They all thanked
mm.
me for pushing them to go by themselves, and they completely understood once they did it. And they just thanked me, and were also like happy and grateful for just my guidance.
Mm, yeah, that's some like wisdom there because I feel like even for me, when because I've done ayahuasca like a handful of times, and the times that I go with a friend, or even when I went with my partner at the time, I was so concerned about their
That's
experience as
the
opposed
problem.
to my experience. Because I'm like a helper personality. I want like, evolving into like a psychedelic plant medicine guide. I want to make sure that the people that like I'm close to and I'm like working with have
Mhm.
like a really great experience. But when I tend to go on retreats or go on like these like plant medicine like ceremony weekends, I do tend to have more breakthroughs when I go by myself because I'm just focused on myself. And for people who are wondering like, oh, do you do ayahuasca just like by yourself, like with a shaman? It's like, well, no, not really. Most of the time you're
So sorry.
taking ayahuasca with like a group of people, and you may not know those people, so they're all kind of strangers. So for example, like the ayahuasca um ceremony I've been to like usually has like a room full of like 20 people, and you're all kind of in ceremony together.
Correct.
But when we talk about doing ayahuasca like alone or by ourselves, we're just talking about going to a ceremony by
Correct.
ourselves, like
Correct.
not
Yes.
going to
Thank
like
you.
friends. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. No, absolutely. You need to have a trusted shaman there. It's set and setting is essential. Um, and yeah, that's a great point. And what you hit the nail on the head. The reason it's not because I don't want to go with anyone. It's because that type of journey, especially if you try it with a loved one, it's human nature to want to take care of someone else, especially if you care about them. And if you're an empath, like this community typically attracts a lot of empaths, it's so difficult for you to be centered and in your own journey and really let go and release. And that's what you're there for. Like, I I think you and I spoke about this when we first met. It irks me when people say that plant medicine is a drug. I I immediately correct them and say, listen, drugs are supposed to be fun. This is not a fun process. Um, Again, I'm not into like drugs or anything like that, but that's the way that I can kind of like separate it from people's minds. Like I tell them, ayahuasca is not something you're going to get addicted to. It's not an easy process. And I mean,
Mhm.
now that I'm in this space, I'm learning about so many different types of plant medicine. Like I just did one, you and I spoke before this ceremony, and I did a plant medicine called Tepescuite. I had never heard of
Mhm.
it. And again, I've been in this community for a while now, and I genuinely feel like it unlocked just like a different aspect of me. And again, just
Mhm.
by plants. This is just a plant medicine, and it's just fascinating. It's
Mhm.
fascinating, and I just I wish everyone would at least learn about it. I understand if they don't want to participate, but just learning about it, I think, can be so just beneficial to
Oh
people.
yeah, like education around this space is like essential for like where we're going as a collective society, I feel like,
Yeah.
as like we're kind of entering into a plant medicine psychedelic renaissance, and that's like where people are really becoming more curious and interested in how they can learn more about these medicines. And I think like just like the two of us doing something like this, like, you know, talking about our experiences and talking about what we learn and what we know, I think it's so valuable for people who are a little bit curious and trying to explore how it could be like a healing modality for them. I wanted to touch on specifically on your experience with how did you pronounce the new plant medicine that you
It,
tried?
Tepescuite. It took me a while.
Epesquite.
Yeah, it took me a while to even figure out the name. You hit the nail on something when you said that, you know, you wanted people to become educated. And I completely agree because there's so many misconceptions. There's so many people that I know that have participated in plant medicine, and because of the stigma, don't want to talk about it because they think people are gonna think, oh, it's, you know, they're doing drugs.
Mm,
And it, again, it crushes me because I just feel if people would just be more open minded, there's just so much healing and so much peace and so much growth that can be done via these medicines. Again, set and setting is essential. You
hmm
really have to make sure you you verify that the shaman is, you know, it's has good integrity. That's why, you know, it, again, with the stigma, you know, it's, you have to like kind of know, it's, you have to be in the know unless you like travel to like, you know, different countries. But even if you do that, I really think that the community, you have to just find out and hear by word of mouth. Like, and again, that's why I'm saying if it finds you, it finds you. Like, you can Google, but you're, you know, you don't know if this shaman is, you know, a reliable source, or if you know they have good intentions. So um especially if you do it here in the States, like, it's still very underground and you know,
hmm
very um yeah, it's, you can't just Google shamans. I mean, nowadays more, but when I first did it in 2019, it was hard to even gather information.
hmm Yeah, that's 100% true. And I think the shaman, the person who's guiding the entire like experience is going to affect the energy of the people like that are experiencing the plant medicine in the room. So like I was so lucky to have like an amazing shaman and guide like lead our ayahuasca ceremonies. Like these past few times I've done it, like I was able to like get connected with her from like a really good friend of mine. And
Hmm.
so I had that connection already. But if you're someone who is really interested in plant medicine and wanting to try it and you don't have that kind of connection, it's so important to do your research on the shaman, the place that you're going to be doing the plant medicine, and really vetting that, asking lots and lots of questions around not only like the type of experience you have, but like what type of safety protocols do they have in
Hmm.
place?
Yeah.
Like, are you able to leave the room? Are you able to, you know, like play your own instruments? Like there's so many different types of questions you can ask them to get a better sense of like the overall experience. And you can find these type of questions, you can actually like, Google search it, like what type of questions should I be asking like the shaman that I'm interested in, you know, doing the plant medicine with. I think that's like a really good way of like priming, like, okay, I really need to be asking all of these type of questions before I go into the experience. And I also wanted to touch on what you said around the differentiation between drug and plant medicine, because I think a lot of people cluster plant medicines within the drug category. And I guess technically, from like a scientific lens and how culturally, socially, we're kind of programmed to think about these medicines, or they're kind of like thought of as a drug, but really I feel like clustering them into a drug category automatically like makes them makes people wary of
Hmm.
like, you know, approaching that
Hmm.
because they're like, oh, it's a drug. It's associated with all of these like criminal charges. It's associated with like all of these like things I'm not supposed to be doing.
Hmm.
And but really plant medicines, like I just think of plant medicines now not as drugs, but like things that come from the earth that we all should have like a right to have access to. And so that's like my own view, and just kind of studying the space for so long is that plant medicines are such like these amazing healing um these like amazing healing beings that like, you know, are provided from the earth itself. And the fact that we kind of de-rank it in my kind of perception to like what's called a drug is kind of like an insult in
Yeah.
my opinion to like these medicines. So that's like what I feel is just so important to get across is, yeah, yes, like people kind of cluster it within the drug category, but really we should be thinking about it in terms of medicine as opposed to drug.
And that's why I correct people. That's why I make it a point to say, to tell them that it's plant medicine. And if you think about it, it's a tea. For example, ayahuasca tea. And we drink teas all the time. We drink tea leaves all the time. So what's the difference, right? And it's just again a different type of medicine. Back in the day, before there were like pharmaceutical companies, people would use plants to heal. So this is just going back to basically our roots, if you think
Mm,
about it that way. You asked me about tepescuite. Tepescuite, I had never heard of it, and also, so my first experience with ayahuasca was I went to a retreat in Costa Rica, and each night I didn't know that there's different strains of ayahuasca as well. So one night we did a Brazilian one, we did a Colombian one, we did a Costa Rican one. So there's
mm,
different strains of, again, of, it's just like a plant. There's so many different plants. So there's different strains of ayahuasca. The biscuite is a plant, but the difference with that, with this, is that this is actually smoked, and it's
mm,
not as, the journey is not as long. It's intense, but it's not as long.
mm,
So for
mm,
ayahuasca, a journey could be several hours.
mm, mm.
Tepescuite is 10 to 15 minutes, but
So,
it was life changing. Like, I
mm,
mean, so I did it upstate. I drove 3 hours. This is how short the amount of time the ceremony is. I was able to drive after a ceremony. I was able to drive 4 hours back home. With
mm,
ayahuasca, you wouldn't be able to do
right.
that. So again, there's just different, they're different medicines, and there's different purposes for the medicine. This particular medicine, again, I had never heard of it. I didn't even know what it was until
Mm,
a friend of mine went, and she had heard of ayahuasca because I went and I did it, and she did a lot of healing, but she still said that she still had um to open her heart, and there was like a lot of forgiveness she needed. She felt um she hadn't arrived at a place where she was able to forgive certain people.
mm,
So she decided to do the tepescuite, and she called me, and she was in tears, and she said, I finally did it. I finally was able to release that pain and that
mm,
hurt. So I started crying. Like, she called me in tears. I was in tears because, again, she's a very good friend of mine that I've known for years, and I just felt compelled to do it because I trust her. And again, that's why these conversations are so important, because if you trust someone and you know they have your best interest at heart, and you're at a place where you're hurting, you're more open and more susceptible to trying new things.
mm,
And I've never really uh I've never really dabbled in the pharmaceutical meds, like the Lipitor, all these medications. I've always been like scared of it, so that's why I wanted a natural route. Um and I decided to do it.
mm,
And the love that I felt after, so apparently they call it like the love medicine, the love plant. And I felt so much love after that ceremony, more than any ceremony I did with ayahuasca. It's I'm still integrating what I experienced. And yeah, it's I don't know if we want to touch on my book that I'm writing, but I'm writing a book and it has to do with basically all of this. It's called Soft Armor. And
Mm,
it's basically what it's about is how we arm ourselves with this thick, heavy armor, but in reality, we're also, we're protecting ourselves, but we're also keeping the good from coming in as
mm,
well.
mm.
So this experience with the plant medicine, all the different ceremonies I've had have allowed me to unlock my armor and open my heart.
I love that. Like, that's such a cool book concept. Like, I love the concept of like the soft armor. Like, yeah, sure, we like come into the experience with like all of these ways to maybe protect our ego, protect
Mhm.
ourselves going into the plant medicine experience. But like once we get into it, like for example, when I go into ayahuasca, Mama Ayahuasca is just kind of like, that's no armor, baby.
Yeah.
And then she really like shows me how, fragile I can really be.
Mhm.
And it's a very humbling experience when working with these plant spirits. And it's interesting you brought up how there's like different like different brews of
Yes.
ayahuasca. I've only worked with I know that there's like Peruvian, there's one in Costa Rica. I've only worked with Hawaiian
I've done
ayahuasca.
Hawaiian.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a lot more like I've been told it's a lot more like mellow compared to like the jungle ayahuasca, but but still I feel like the experience like it allows me to get to the root of like what I'm really wanting to work on, and that's why I say set the right intentions going into like plant medicine experiences, because your intention is like, I kind of look at it as like your spell. Like
Yeah.
you're casting this spell essentially going into this plant medicine experience, and with that, you're bringing in that kind of command, that magic into the experience, so that way you can really go on a journey where you're keeping your intention in mind, and therefore being able to work on like part of yourselves that you're kind of really called to do or work on yourself. But I think that's like such a fascinating book concept, and I'm really curious to know like what has been um your greatest point of healing in your journey with plant medicine.
Being vulnerable, learning to be
Mm,
vulnerable. Um, and again, this a lot of my book has to do with this. Like I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I've seen it all. I've seen things people shouldn't see. So naturally, growing up in a big city like New York, you build up this armor. You're always on edge. You're always trying to protect yourself. You don't know what can happen at the drop of a dime. So it's very, very difficult to be raised in that type of environment and yet still feel okay to be vulnerable, yet still feel okay to be soft.
mm,
um so that this has been a lot of my journey, I think, has led me to this, because I knew I had a blockage and I couldn't put my finger on it. I was like,
mm,
what is this? Like, why am I having these blockages? I've had issues with, like, just in love, to be quite frank. And I was like, okay, I know I'm a loving person, I know, but what is it? There's something blocking me. And that's when I decided to go on this journey. And again, this journey has just changed my life, because it's made me realize that being vulnerable is a superpower.
mm,
And that we, especially nowadays, they don't teach that as much. It's everyone's like, everyone act for themselves, work hard, grind, it's very individualistic,
mm,
our society. So that's maybe one of the biggest takeaways and the biggest lessons that I've learned, is to be vulnerable. This last plant medicine ceremony was all about just opening my heart.
Mm,
It was so much healing. It was ancestral healing. So many, it, we dug so deep that I genuinely feel it unlocked a portion of my heart, because
mm,
I've just been so willing again to be so vulnerable, because if you really think about it, that's love is all we have. It really is. And it's sad that we come into this world as a kid, and like all you have is love. You don't think about like, anger or problem and stuff, and then obviously society programs you, but love really is all there is. And
mm,
that is the biggest takeaway that I've gotten from plant medicine. They say, so what I've heard from a shaman once, and that really resonated with me, said Mother Ayahuasca will give you what you want, not what you need.
mm,
So you can sometimes, for me, I've in previous ceremonies, I went in with certain intentions, but I could give you a perfect one. So I did a ceremony with a Hawaiian brew, and the
mm,
shaman said, "This is not like liquor. You guys don't have to continue to take more dosages because it's fine. You're in your journey." So again, these journeys are different for everyone. The first four journeys that I did with ayahuasca, I didn't see any visions. I just got a lot of just like mental downloads, and I just
mm,
like a lot of like realizations and stuff like that. And I was getting upset because, I was like, why is everybody having these like major transformations and see all these like visions and stuff? And it wasn't until my fifth ceremony that I went in and I finally surrendered.
mm,
So that's
mm.
that's one of the biggest lessons I also learned, was you have to surrender to the medicine. And the more you surrender, the more the medicine heals you, the more the medicine teaches you what it is that you need to hear. So I finally surrendered and I got everything. I started seeing the visuals. I started, just really, really experiencing it. And they called for the second cup, and I went over and the shaman said, are you feeling it? And I was like, oh my God, yeah. And he was like, okay, just signal big or small. So I said small. So I took it and I went back to my area, and immediately all the vision stopped. And what I got was, you're always seeking more. You always want more. You were doing perfectly fine. I was showing you everything you needed. I was connecting with you, but you wanted more. And that's it. It stopped. All the visions, the
Mm.
messages all stopped. And that was my lesson. More isn't always better. That was a
Yeah.
huge lesson I learned during that ceremony. So yeah, the plant knows what to give you.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that because usually in ceremonies when I've been like, okay, I'm like ready to go, I'm like ready to dive into like my subconscious and like heal deep shit. Like when I'm like in that mindset, I usually like take and take and take, like just drink like, up to like 3 cups of ayahuasca. And it's like very little happens.
Mhm.
But then when I'm like, okay, like I'm just going to go into it. And I think my intention will be like self love and just be kind of casual with it, then oh my gosh, I went through it. So I think like when you're in that mindset and you're really just wanting more and more and more, my grandmother ayahuasca knows you,
Yeah.
and she'll be like, no, you're pushing for more, you should just like relax and you should just like go with the flow here, because that's really what how I've had the major breakthroughs on ayahuasca, is just like going into it with this almost um like light intention, not wanting to go like that deep and wanting to just take more and more and more. But those are like typically the nights where ironically I kind of go deeper.
Mhm,
So it's
mhm.
just so funny you say that.
Yeah, and then another thing that they said, that shaman had said, was ayahuasca is, again, they call it mother ayahuasca because it's a mother's love. So they say, if you go into it and surrender, she'll treat you like the most loving, most affectionate mother. But if you don't surrender and you resist, that's when you can have those hard journeys. And I've heard of a lot of people who've had like very difficult journeys. But ultimately, once you, even if you're having a difficult journey, if you surrender, it ends with love. The difference with Tepescuite was I had an intention, and it just like you smoke it, and after that it basically, you basically feel like a truck hit you. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's quick, and it comes in fast, and it's done during the day. So they call it the grandfather um
Mm-hmm.
medicine. So yeah, it was just, again, I'm still processing everything because it was just like a month ago, but it comes in quick, hard, fast, but also heals you. And again, so you can do several ceremonies in one day. And again, the ceremonies are like 10-15 minutes. I had to do three because I had just a lot that I had to work on. So the first two were difficult, but the goal is that by the last one, you'll feel the love. And that's what happened to me. Again, similar to
Mm-hmm.
ayahuasca. Um, but it's just, yeah, it's very interesting how these plants just have take on a life of their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's so interesting. They have their own personalities and their own characteristics. Because for anyone who's on this call and that you're like familiar with plant medicine, if you've taken it, then you probably know that you get a certain like download or feeling like when you're kind of like in the actual trip itself. But if you're not familiar with plant medicine, what the really cool part about it is like each plant spirit has like its own kind of personality and characteristic, and you can kind of experiment with like different types of plants and different types of modalities to see like which one actually resonates with you. So, with that being said, I think for me, I've really felt the most connection with psilocybin mushrooms, and I felt like it's been every time I, uh, go into a journey with mushrooms, I feel like a deep connection, a deep partnership with that medicine. And I even receive just like these telepathic downloads. And what's interesting is that the spirits that I'm kind of communicating with on mushrooms, they it's a they as opposed to a he, she, it.
Hmm.
It seems like it's a they spirit. I'm like kind of conversing with like multiple different types of entities, it seems like. But whereas like ayahuasca is just very specific. It's like one, very feminine,
Hmm.
earthy spirit that I'm like kind of conversing with. So it just really depends on the experience, depends on the plant medicine. But I'm curious to know from you, Eileen, like out of all of like the plants that you've kind of worked with so far, which of the ones like maybe resonates with you the most?
So I've never done a psilocybin journey. Not because I wouldn't, I just haven't had the opportunity, to be honest. And also ayahuasca, so the last ceremony that I told you where everything stopped, I tried to do another ceremony maybe like a year or two later, because to me, I tell people plant medicine is not a one-time fix. It's not magic. It's a ongoing journey. It's like I compare it to the gym. Like you're not going to go to the gym one day and think you're going to have a six pack. Like it's continual work. And they say that one session of ayahuasca can be the equivalent of 10 to 15 years in therapy, and I firmly believe that.
Mhm.
Um so I've never done, again, the psilocybin in that uh type of environment. I honestly think De Pesquite was the biggest breakthrough I've had. It was,
Mm,
I can't even describe it. It was, and that's another thing. When my friends, especially the first time I did ayahuasca, everyone was like so curious and wanted me to like explain my journey and what it was like. And it's just so hard to describe it because it's just such like an internal healing with your soul and your spirit. So it's very difficult to put into words these experiences. Um not that you can't, but again, it's such a personal thing. Not that I'm not willing to share, but it's just it might not even make sense to other people what it was that I felt. But going back to your question, I definitely think that Fresquita was life changing for me, and I
Mm-hmm.
never thought I would do anything that I would be as as would have transformed my life as much as Aya. But the Biscuite really, really threw me for a loop. I didn't know what to expect because I went in, I went by myself. I didn't even know you. I thought it was a tea. I had no idea. I got there and I genuinely didn't know what to expect. And again, so with this, it's as opposed to ayahuasca where everybody does it at the same time, only two or three people do a ceremony at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. But and again, it's only 10-15 minutes, so it's fine. But the shaman, what they do is if they see you're having a hard ceremony, they'll smoke it. Then they'll like touch you on your hand or your shoulder or something. And there's multiple people there, just like in ayahuasca ceremonies. That's also something else that it's very important when you're doing an ayahuasca ceremony. You have to make sure that there's facilitators there, that like you said,
Mm-hmm.
that there's it's a safe environment. So with this, with the biscuite, the shaman, if he sees you're having a bad not bad, I don't want to say bad because bad and good is relative, but a difficult journey, they'll smoke it and put their hand on you. And this is what's so fascinating about the spirit world and about all these different plants. When the shaman did that, when because I was having a very difficult journey, probably the most difficult journey that I've ever had on plant medicine, he was able to tell me what I was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, we all convened and you close the group and you close the ceremony. And I asked him, I said, hey, can you because then somebody else went under with me as well, a stranger, which is just that's another thing that the container is just so loving. Everyone's there just for the same purpose to like if you're in the right set and setting, which is why again I'm going to keep stressing, make sure you do your due diligence and go to the right person that cultivates a really good group because energies can get dark.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very important. But so there was someone there who I had never met, and she decided she saw I was having a hard time, and she said, "Listen, I'll go in with you," and she smoked it with me. And these two strangers who I have never met both told me exactly what I was feeling and seeing, which
Mm-hmm.
is wow.
Yeah,
Wow is all I can say.
I've had that experience in multiple ceremonies that I've been a part of, including like ayahuasca and also psilocybin mushrooms, where I'm literally seeing in my mind's eye the same thing that someone else is seeing, or we're seeing the same spirit or entity like right in front of us. And we kind of talk about it after the ceremony. I was like, oh, did you see that kind of dark, like rounded, like creature that was kind of walking in the room? And they're like, yes, oh my gosh, I saw that. That was like crazy. And so
I got goosebumps.
yeah, and so you literally have this collective telepathic experience, like when you're on these medicines, and I think that in itself is magic.
Hmm.
Like I just feel like that like science and like our human mind can't possibly grasp like how that is even possible, but people have those experiences all the time, including myself, including you. And so like what can we say about that? Like it's not just our it can't just be like our subjective experience. Like there's something more must be going on. And so I just think it's so fascinating that we're all kind of telepathically connected, like a mycelial network of sorts, and we can all kind of tap into what we're going through and what we're experiencing. And even like the most trained shamans and guides, because they're able to tap into that space so easily, they can really have that telepathic connection with the people that they're working with. And so that's what I've seen to be like so impactful and like evidence of a really good shaman is those who have that experience, those like years of wisdom to just be able to hold not only hold space, but if someone is going through like a difficult experience, how can they help them through that experience using kind of this telepathic ability, or kind of seeing how they can better assist using kind of that
Yeah.
realm. And I think that's like the most, like one of the most interesting parts about like the overall plant medicine experience too.
Yeah, you just realize that it's not our world is not only about the 3D, because I mean you said it yourself, you were seeing entities that other people were seeing, like that doesn't make sense to the rational mind. And that's why I think that it's so difficult to um, talk about plant medicine. And that's why I think some people who have done it, like I said, I know plenty of people that have done it now that I'm in this community. And I've met people who, have prominent jobs, and like the minute that they see that, if you connect, they say like, listen, can you please never talk about this? Like, and I'm like, yeah, that's your journey. I would never. But it's still so stigmatized, and that's what I think why these conversations are so important. It's getting better because it is becoming more mainstream, and more people are now wanting to search for more holistic ways to heal, and I think that's amazing. But I think there's still a lot of work to do for sure.
Hmm. And we have to keep in mind that plant medicine, for people who have never tried it, it could be the catalyst that, shatters their perception of reality.
And that's why people are
Which,
scared. Some people, yeah.
yeah, so I have like a lot of like friends who have more like practical, logical, realistic brains, and I think like some of them kind of like steer clear of plant medicine because it shows them things like in the trip. I'm like, and it's so hard for them to integrate it into their daily life because they're just like, how was that even possible? How was I even able to do that? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, doesn't compute. And so they just kind of like stray away from it. They're like, I'm just gonna put that on the shelf and really just not come back to it for the long haul. So I see a lot of people doing that, which is completely fine. It's like you said, it's people's own journey. But as facilitators, as people who are like educating people around these substances, I feel like it's so important to kind of assess like the type of person like curious about the experience, and just give them like a sense of the guardrails
Hmm.
of like, okay, like once you go into this experience, it might, question your concept of reality. Are you ready for that? Are you ready for that? And so just asking those type of questions to those two people who are kind of curious about it, especially it's like their first time. So I think that's like one important point to hone in on too.
I also want to go back to what you said, the integration. That's very, very important because, yes, a lot of people, especially if it's your first time, you start questioning everything. You start questioning reality, what's real, what's not. So it's very important to have a group, or not necessarily a group, but just someone who you can go to and talk to about what this integration looks like, because it is a life-changing experience, and your life most likely is going to change. I believe for the better. Um, and I've seen most of my friends and the people that have done it for the better, but everyone's journey is different. So it is very essential that whomever you do a ceremony with also has a type of integration, because
Mm.
that's extremely important.
Yeah. And what has like integration looked like for you on your own journey, especially with this like plant medicine that you recently tried?
Um, With me, it's just putting into play a lot of the downloads that I got. So
Mm.
this recent one was really most about healing my heart, opening my heart. And that's what I've been trying to do. I've just been trying. And, I feel like I've been trying to do that ever since I started my first journey. But I think there was still part of me that was a little scared and holding back a lot. But this, like I said, I think it just unlocked a different portion of me where I'm no longer afraid. Because one of the messages I got from the entities was, you think that you're in control, like that if you don't make a meeting or if you don't go to something, like that's gonna like deter the rest of like your life. And it's like, no, no, no. Like th- relax. Like just be yourself, be love. And as scary as it is, you're not gonna mess anything up by leading with love. And
Mm.
that's really the biggest takeaway that I got from my last ceremony. It was, and again, I've known this, but I'm less fearful of being loving. That's really what it
Mm.
boils down to.
That's beautiful. It's funny because I every time I work with like my plant medicine choice, magic mushrooms, they always tell me to relax. Relax, take it easy, have more fun, relax.
Mhm.
And so I think it's so many of us are just really geared towards like programmed by society. We have to just like move quick, 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 quick. We have to like move fast. We have to do things, but really, we're not really programmed to just like sit and be with
Yeah.
like ourselves and just like appreciate the present moment more, where that's where most of our downloads come from in the first place. And so I feel like through my own experiences with plant medicine, I think it's like very heart opening and allows me to be able to channel that present moment frequency so much easier. And my integration part of that is really trying to, out of kind of the plant medicine journey, how can I embody more of that present moment frequency into my field and like my on a daily basis? Because I think life gets busy, we like things get hectic, and we typically fall out of that. But I've learned with plant medicine. Plant medicine was actually my first meditation teacher
Mhm.
that showed me how I can interweave and kind of integrate a uh, a consistent meditation practice into my day,
Yeah.
so that way I feel more connected with the present moment all throughout my day, and I just prime my mind to really embrace that overall sense of being.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. There was something else that you were saying that stood out to me when you said, the people who have like logical brains, it sometimes they are hesitant to do this type of medicine, and that completely makes sense because what I've heard is from people, well, I don't want to completely change my life and move into like move to the jungle and be like this crazy hippie, and I'm like, no, if that
Like I'm not
happens,
doing that.
I know. That's what I tell people. I tell people, if that happens, that means that that's deep down in your soul. That's what you always wanted. So don't ever be scared that you're just going to be a completely different person. You're going to change if you do the work, but in a good way.
Mm,
So I try to tell people, don't get scared that you're gonna quit your job and that you're gonna join the Peace Corps. Like it's not like that. Yes, of course. Hopefully you're doing this because you want to become a better person and because you want to evolve, um and that's beautiful, that's great, it's commending, but don't think that this medicine is going to make you a completely different person. If anything, it's going to make you more in tune with who you really are.
yep, 100%. I 100% agree with that. It's really the catalyst, the process that allows you to get into like your own body and realize like who like what your soul's calling is and like what you are actually like meant to be doing on this earth, and that just involves like being yourself and really honing in on like what that means for you.
Yeah.
um but I wanted to take like a minute to, I know we have like
Oh, yeah.
some people out there wondering Just like in general around like the topic of plant medicine, like, and if you have any questions or anything, feel free to like drop them in the chat. We'd be happy to like answer any of those. If you have any questions around like our own journey, kind of what you've been listening to, please let us know as well. We're very, very open to any questions or feedback that you have, or even like even type of experiences that you've had with plant medicine too.
Yeah.
Like, feel free to like drop those in, just even if they're like really brief. We'd love to riff on those and like talk about like that type of stuff as well. So if you have anything, feel free to drop it in the chat.
Yeah.
And I see we have like we had a lot of people tuning in today, so that was great.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I know. Sweet. Oh, Tom, yay, this is great. Thank you, Tom. I'm so glad that you can make the live.
Thank you, Tom.
Um, yeah. So I guess to close as we're kind of approaching the 30-minute mark, what would you tell people around like if they're really curious about trying plant medicine, what do you feel like their first few steps should be in that process?
I think this would research as much as possible. Reach out to people. Reach out to people like you and I. Look, watch documentaries. That's what I did because, like I said, I didn't know anyone who had done anything like this. So I just try to educate myself as much as possible. I read up on Reddit. I read up on TripAdvisor for the facility that I went to. Just research, and follow your intuition and your instincts. If you're being called, like I said before, if you're being called to do this type of medicine, it's for a reason. So just really follow your intuition. If you're being guided to going with like one shaman as opposed to the other, then go with where your gut is telling you to go. I think it's more of like an internal process, this type of journey. So just sit with yourself and just trust yourself. You have all the answers.
Hmm. I totally agree with that. Research is super important for, investigating what plant medicine's for you, but also what experience is for you too. Um, and I even have I recommend like certain books too if like you all are interested in learning more about plant medicine. I actually really love this book. It's called
Oh, I've
Psychedelic
never.
Explorer's Guide.
Oh, cool.
It's by James Fadiman. He's like a researcher. He's done tons of research on microdosing, but also just like plant medicine in general. So it's like a really handy guide and book to like dive into to learn more about the plant spirits and how they're not only here to like heal us, but here to really allow us to have these like spiritual epiphanies. And kind of be like these kind of facilitators in our own kind of awakening process, which is super cool.
Mm.
Um, I
Plus,
see that Shannon says, because I'm naturally connected to the other side, I have Shays that has this fear of plant medicine. I guess I feared it would push me into this reality I wouldn't be able to mentally handle. Yeah, that's a really good point, Shannon. So I would say for those of you who um, may be very sensitive or very sensitive to otherworldly kind of events, or you're really connected to the other side, or you might even feel like taking plant medicine might exacerbate that and maybe unground you. I think like how Eileen said at the beginning of the call, there are certain people that plant medicine might not be for. Like, it just really depends on what your goals are with plant medicine, what you're interested in doing. But if it's like a fear that you're going to become really ungrounded, I would definitely do some research on that and see like maybe even speak to a shaman and ask them like, is this like a fear that comes up a lot in these type of
yeah,
ceremonies?
it's pretty
Because
right.
I think like some like these fears are things that the plant medicine allows us to work on and get past. Like there are the blocks that allow them to like kind of um, like be released. And so the fear around that, plant medicine actually it might be of some help, but again, like it really just depends on your own situation. And I would also say like if you're taking like psych meds or like
Oh,
other types of medications, there are contraindications for plant medicines. So, for example, if you're taking MAOI inhibitors or SSRIs, like you shouldn't be kind of taking plant medicine while you're taking those medications, as like that's like very dangerous and could lead to and it could be lethal. So it's just a matter of like again like researching what are the contraindications to plant medicine, but also like do you feel like you're in the appropriate mental state to go into a plant medicine experience like that, and just talking with a guide with a shaman through like a one-on-one coaching session, it could be really beneficial.
yeah. And also, ayahuasca is a lot, and I get that. So some people like to start off with psilocybin ceremonies. So there's different things that you can try. Again, with the guidance of a shaman and just making sure that you're taking care of yourself first, because that's what matters the most. Um, just again do your research like we've been saying, but you don't always have to dive in immediately to ayahuasca. There's other ways to connect, microdosing
Mhm.
sometimes. Like there's so many different things that can be done that don't have to necessarily be like an ayahuasca ceremony. It's again it's basically what you're called to, and just always make sure you're doing it safely, and where you're taking care of yourself and your own mental health, because that's what's most
Yeah,
important.
I like how you brought up the the modality or technique of
Yeah.
microdosing, because that's really great for people who are interested in dipping their toe into the plant medicine world, but don't want a full on like trip or
Mhm.
experience quite yet, and they're just wanting to like see how they're just wanting to like try it on and see like how it works for them, or just trying to get a little bit more. Um, like a feeling of like what it could experience or what they could feel like. So microdosing is a really great option for you to really explore how you can maybe microdose like psilocybin. Like there's other like other information on the internet on other types of plant medicines that you can microdose as well. But again, it's about just doing that research, seeing which one is most applicable and has the and would be like most beneficial to you. Kind of looking into those first and then making the decision, okay, this sounds really appealing. Should I proceed with like microdosing and seeing like how that could work for me? And that's like a really good way of just like, again, dipping your toe into the water of the psychedelic world.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Very well put.
Ooh. Oh, I see that Lauren has joined. Hey, hey. Thank you so much for joining, Lauren. And we have Helen. I've just dropped you an email. Oh, great. I'll check it right after this. Amazing.
Well,
Well, I
it's
know
been a
we're.
pleasure.
Go ahead.
No, I said it's been a pleasure. This has been
Oh, yeah.
awesome. We should do it again sometime.
I know. I love this topic, as you know, and I just, I find so much like joy, pleasure, like talking with you as well, just like through our own experiences. I think we're on like a very similar path, and I really appreciate you taking the time and jumping on this live with me today and having fun with this topic. So,
Likewise. Thank you for having me. I had an awesome time. And yeah, if anyone wants to just pick our brains, they can always, I'm sure this goes for you as well. Just reach out. It's always beneficial to have someone that's gone through this journey, give you just a little bit of guidance if possible.
mhm. Yeah, it's always good to kind of lean on people who had that experience, that guy, so they can actually give you that appropriate guidance for sure.
Mhm. Totally.
Well, thank you so much, Eileen.
Okay.
Again, this was like a
Anytime.
pleasure, and
Thank you.
I hope you have a great rest of your Friday.
Sure.
And I'll sign us off, and I'll just say goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Bye, everyone.